What's going on, everybody? It's Jeff Iafrate from Crunch Time, and it's Monday. So that means I'm giving out my grades for the 2024 NFL draft class for the Detroit Lions. And now that I have all the draft picks, we know who they are. The breakdowns are on our channel, by the way, which you can go check out. Posted them all throughout Sunday, and we were obviously live all weekend with Q&A stream. So if you want more draft coverage, you could check those out. And I'm sure we'll be covering this as well tonight, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Catch us. We're live weekdays on our channel. You guys have shown a lot of love. We've been growing this channel, especially throughout this weekend. So for all new subscribers, thank you. But today I'm going to give out my grades. And I wanted to know where you guys are at with this, because I went through, there was a total of 6 selections in the 2024 NFL draft. The Lions made, they traded up twice into the 4th round, got 2 players, and we'll go through it. They traded up in the 1st round. Brad Holmes was very active, like he always is, especially when he finds players that he absolutely loves. And he wants to go get those guys, which I think good general managers, great general managers should absolutely do that. We'll start with their 1st round selection, which Brad Holmes did trade up to get. It was a player that I didn't think would be there, especially if you sat. And he pretty much stayed at 29 until the last minute, and then traded up a couple spots, 5 spots to be exact, and drafted Terrion Arnold, the corner out of Alabama, who all throughout the draft process, I mean, we've covered it a lot. I don't put too much stock into mock drafts, but he was a consensus top 20 player. I mean, you've only seen him fall in the 20s, at least in different scenarios, or people predicted he'd fall in the 20s very rarely. And the Lions got him at 24, which is absurd. And you didn't really have to give up a lot to do so, especially with the caliber of player he is. I think he's a future CB1. Absolutely, I do. And he played in the SEC, faced SEC competition. He's the character side of it really checks out for me. Like the human being, Terrion Arnold, I can buy into. Like he is, when you listen to him speak at the press conference, I'm like, okay, yeah, this guy, I can see why they fell in love with him. The way he approaches the game, his mindset, he just wants to be great so bad. And I think that's someone that, especially in this cornerback room, fits perfectly. And we've had this discussion. You guys know I wanted Kool-Aid McKinstry because I thought that was a realistic option. I didn't know Terrion Arnold would be a realistic option. But it's the same reason I wanted a corner at 29, who no matter who the corner was. The NFC North, it could even be this year, but especially over the next couple of years, will be one of, if not the best division in football, especially the skill positions the NFC North has at wide receiver. And you need corners. And Brad Holmes doubled up on corner, which we'll get to Ennis Rakestraw in a second here. But Terrion Arnold, this is an easy A+. Easy. For the value, for what he can be for the Detroit Lions, he checked all those boxes. And Brad has already told us that he doesn't strictly target positions. He targets the player, right? Best player available. That's something he believes in. And it just so happened to be a position of need, which is corner. The Lions desperately need. So Terrion Arnold gets an A+ in my book. Very, very easy grade there. We'll get to the second selection, which was the 2nd round, 29th overall in the 2nd round. And that was Ennis Rakestraw, cornerback out of Missouri. And this is somebody that, when you go back and when we've talked about Ennis Rakestraw, in the 1st round, I did not want Ennis Rakestraw. I was not interested. I think there were a lot of question marks with just staying healthy. He was dealing with some injuries. And I was like, yeah, 29, I'm not on board. Now in the 2nd round at pick 29, you can count me in. This is value. I mean, that's value. You're doubling up on corner, and you got to think when we first reacted to the pick, I think we weren't expecting him to double up on a position. But once you listen to Brad speak and you found out that he had Ennis Rakestraw as his 2nd overall corner, his 2nd ranked corner in the entire draft, Brad loves this guy, obviously. And Ennis, funny enough, almost committed to Alabama. There was an opportunity there for him to go to Alabama. He chose Missouri. He's a talented player, certainly. Obviously, there's some question marks. That's the reason he fell. But for value-wise, it's a great pick. I mean, this is, you could argue now, a weakness on the Lions could very well be a strength in the future. This goes back to the BPA pick. Ennis Rakestraw, best player available to Brad Holmes. He took him. And you look at the cornerback position for the Detroit Lions, Carlton Davis, right? Amik Robertson, short-term deal. But Carlton Davis, 1 year left on his deal. And then you keep going. Emmanuel Mosley, short-term deal, but also guys coming off back-to-back ACL injuries. There's question marks there as well. So this, to me, again, I don't think Brad picked him strictly thinking that, but best player available. And here's the benefit of that. You got your future corners potentially. And unlike the Lions in the past, taking a guy like Jeff Okudah, where you're expecting him to be your best corner year one, which does not happen often. It's very rare. Cornerback is a position where it takes guys a minute to adjust to, especially in this league where the defensive players are already at a disadvantage as it is. But now Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw get to come in and learn and not be rushed into a position to, carry the Detroit Lions secondary. They have help. I mean, they do. Carlton Davis will be covering your number one receivers, the opposing team's number one receiver. Terrion Arnold doesn't have to be your number one corner year one. Ennis Rakestraw doesn't have to play as much as he would if you didn't have those players. So there's not as much pressure on these guys, which I do think will help their development. And I don't know, your defensive coordinator is also a former corner, AG, pretty good corner, by the way. So I'm giving this Ennis Rakestraw pick an A+ because it's all value. I don't care what anybody thinks of the player. I think it's a first round player, first round graded talent that was available almost in the third round. It was really the back of the second round. So this is a great pickup by the Detroit Lions. I think their first two picks, A+ by me. I don't think there's really much of an argument there unless you're not a fan of the player, which I don't think that should matter. It's the value. And they got a first round corner in the second round. Now we'll move on. The Lions, Brad Holmes, traded up for Giovanni Manu, offensive tackle out of British Columbia. This man is, and I've said this on our Q&A stream, one of my favorite draft selections, if not my favorite, just because of what he can be. I'm very intrigued by Giovanni Manu. I mean, he's 6'8", 350 with no gut. I said that on the stream. No gut at all. I don't understand it. Doesn't make sense to me. He is, the term built different applies to Giovanni Manu. He is a specimen. And I'm super intrigued with the plan they have for him. I know Brad said he's more of a developmental player that could become something. You paid Penei Sewell top tackle money. He's going to take over for Taylor Decker. I think that's very obvious. So Giovanni Manu playing right tackle. To have Penei and Giovanni. Those are two huge human beings. And we've seen the, I guess, prototype of Giovanni Manu work in the NFL. Mailata, tackle for the Eagles. These 6'7", 6'8" guys, just massive human beings, but they're quick. I think Giovanni ran like a 4'8", 4'9", 40. He's athletic too, by the way. Check his vertical. I love this pick. I didn't know who he was, but the more I've done research, I've had a couple days now to actually look into the player, and you got to hear Brad Holmes and his perspective on it. Of course, he played against lower level competition, but you can't teach that size. I mean, 6'8", 350. He can handle players in the NFL. It's more about technique and getting adjusted to the league, which with Hank Fraley and the vets they have on the offensive line, he will be able to develop. It's really up to him if he can put it together, which we'll see, but I have confidence he will. I give that pick a B+ because of his potential. I think that has to go into it. I know when you look at a fourth round pick, he was fourth round pick, 26th overall in the fourth round. A guy like Giovanni Manu, you're like, who? If you're a college football fan, you're like, I don't know who Giovanni Manu is. I don't think because he's not familiar, it shouldn't factor into grading. I think the upside here is tremendous, and I'm a huge fan of what he can be. So this is my grade. I'm giving him a B+, or at least Brad Holmes a B+, for finding a guy like Giovanni Manu. I'm excited to see what he can become for the Detroit Lions. Now, they also traded up in the fourth round to get Sione Vake, safety / running back out of Utah, who, I would just call him a football player, to be honest with you. They needed a running back. He played snaps there. He played safety, played special teams. Watch him with the ball in his hands. That's what you have to really do. I mean, he's a super intriguing player. He just seems, even before the draft process, his versatility, and now with the changes to special teams in the NFL, he looks like a Dan Campbell player. And what Brad Holmes, what they want. Just to be able to play all phases of the game, help out wherever he's asked to do so. And to me, I understood the pick. Now, when it comes to grading, kind of projecting what he can be, I think he's going to be a damn good special teams player. I think he could play snaps at safety. I think he could play snaps at running back, which they have pretty good running backs, so I don't see that. But at least be on the field offensively. I'm stuck between a B and a B-, because I I don't know how to project a player like that. And that's where it's hard for me. Like, I like the player, but what's the vision for him? Until I really get to see that, it's hard for me to give a grade. I'm going to go with a B because I don't know how to project him. I'm excited for him, but I don't know how to. At least Giovanni Manu, I know what the plan looks like. I'm like, okay, he's going to be your future tackle if he can develop right. Maybe you can even play guard if they get him to. But I know the plan for him. Sione Vaki is just, he's just going to be a do-it-all Swiss Army knife kind of guy. So I like the pick, but I'm going to give it a B. We'll move on here. Mekhi Wingo, defensive tackle. They took him in the 6th round. Now, these last 2 6th-round selections are very interesting. Mekhi Wingo was a top 100 player. He was somebody that a lot of scouts had going in the top 100. Now, he's available in the 6th round, which that's value. That's value right there. I mean, he has upside as a pure pass rusher. The Lions, especially Brad, he talked about it. And he said, hey, he's a defensive tackle, but he has pass rush upside. You play him on the edge in early downs. He could do a lot. He's versatile. And for a 6th-round pick, to me, see you later, Levi Onwuzurike. Bring on in Mekhi Wingo. Like, I like this pick a lot. At first, defensive tackle, you're thinking, oh, okay, a little thrown off, but I love the pick. I watched some LSU games, and he stuck out to me. Like, he has upside to be a starter in this league. And with the guys that have a defensive tackle, I think Levi's time is already ticking as it is, and you bring in Mekhi Wingo. But I don't think he's strictly a Levi Onwuzurike replacement because he's not just a defensive tackle. He could play all over. And I think Brad compared him to Josh Pascal's with that type of versatility. But you drafted Josh Pascal in the 2nd round. You got Mekhi Wingo in the 6th. So I love this pick. I'm giving it an A- because of the value here. I mean, he should have been a top 100 player. And that's what brings me to the next player who I believe should have been a top 100 player, but had question marks, whether it was tearing his ACL or other things that Brad didn't really go into. Christian Mahogany, guard out of Boston College. Played against some damn good defensive linemen in his conference. Boston College, and what he did, again, I get the question marks, but there's no way this man should have been available in the 6th round. And Brad was probably just as confused as I was and decided to select him. He could be a starter in a year or so. That's how much I have faith in Christian Mahogany. He can be post Kevin Zeitler, your starting guard, easily. That's how much confidence I have in him. And I think Brad called him a dirtbag because of how he plays. It's a compliment, by the way. But he plays ferocious. And he's going to fit in on this offensive line. Goes back to kind of the Giovanni Manu point with who they have. Got to go back to Hank Fraley. I mean, Hank Fraley deserves more love. He's one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL. I mean, you throw this guy anybody, he'll find a way to develop him. And even back to the Giovanni Manu point, what they do with Dan Skipper, you can't tell me Giovanni Manu can't be in a similar role. And Christian Mahogany, what they do with Colby Sorsdahl or Coyote or these other players that they're kind of just on the fly they have and they're playing, Christian Mahogany, I think, can make an impact and be even better than those players. I do. I like Christian Mahogany a lot, and I cannot believe he was there. I gave Christian Mahogany an A- as well. I did. So that would give, if you go through all 6 picks, Terrion Arnold, I gave an A+. Ennis Rakestraw, I gave an A+. Giovanni Manu, I'm going to give him a B+. For at least Brad, this is giving Brad Holmes a B+. Sione Vaki, I'm giving Brad a B-, or a B, excuse me. Mekhi Wingo, I'm giving Brad an A-, and Christian Mahogany, I'm giving an A-. So that's 4 A's out of 6 selections. The other 2 are B's, B+ and a B. That gives an average grade for the entire class as an A-. So this is an excellent draft by Brad Holmes. Now, we don't know, this is obviously the Monday after the draft, so we have to see how these players, what they turn into. But I don't care. Like, I thought this was a really good draft. Yes, there's the wide receiver discussion. I wanted a wide receiver. I didn't want one in the 1st round, and you heard Brad say it. I mean, it was an offensive draft class, but they still went back-to-back corner, which that's why, because these corners fell, and Brad had them very high, had them highly rated. But I'm happy they didn't take a wide receiver, or at least not happy, but I'm fine with it. I understand it because DPJ and these guys, I think he has faith in who they have, which is completely fine. And they brought in Isaiah Williams. Go watch his tape out of Illinois. I think he'll be a pretty solid addition there, training camp body. So, yeah, I'm happy with this. It's all defensive players and 2 offensive linemen. To me, I'm good. that's again, that's what this team is. Their identity, physicality. And that's kind of what Brad did here again, addressing you got a defensive tackle, you got 2 offensive linemen, and you got basically a do-it-all guy in Sione Vaki, and then 2 corners. So, yeah, I love it. It's a great draft class. I think Brad, we'll see what these guys turn into, like I said, but I have confidence that with the right development and the coaching staff they have, they can develop these players. What do you guys think, though? Am I too high, too low? Give your grades in the comment section below. What would you grade each player of this draft class? You heard mine, and you heard my reasoning. So please chime in. I'd love to have discussions. And don't forget, subscribe because we're past 6,000 thanks to you guys. Let's keep climbing. Let's get to 10,000 subscribers. Turn on notifications because you get notified every time we post. And tune into our live show, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. every single weekday. Until later on today, I'll catch you guys.